We welcome you to yet another episode of the Weekly Manna. In today's episode, we will be talking briefly about self-glorification, self-gratification, and greed. Man does everything possible to exalt himself so that he can get all the glory to him. A child of God is totally different. Anything that we do should be solely for the glorification of God's kingdom and God's name. God has sent us to the face of earth. God has made us for the glory of His name. We shouldn't seek the glory to ourselves. For this topic, I would like to turn to your attention to 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse number 35. This portion is from the life of King Saul, the first king of Israel, chosen, anointed, and put in place with a great purpose. Now, what we read in verse number 35 of chapter 14 is, "And Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first altar that he had built to the Lord." We read in the life of Saul that he built an altar to the Lord, and it was the first altar that he had built. If you look into the life of Abraham, you can see that wherever he went, he built an altar to the Lord. Now, when we come back to the life of Saul, it's very interesting in this chapter 14 that we read that he built an altar to the Lord. But when we go to the very next chapter, that's chapter 15, in verse number 12, we read that Saul, he set up a monument for himself. See, in the previous chapter, he had set up an altar to the Lord to give glory unto God. But few days later, now he is setting up monuments for the glorification of his name. We got to be very careful about this. Now, we serve a God who's zealous. He would not let his glory be parted to anything else. So we cannot steal the glory that belongs to God. In Psalms number 118, Psalms 118, verses 23, it reads, "This is the Lord's doing, and it's marvelous in our eyes." God does a lot of things around us, and sometimes through our lives as well. We might feel that we did it because of our capabilities. We might feel that we did it because of our skills and talents. But let me tell you, we should always acknowledge the fact that anything that we have been able to achieve, it's purely because of the grace of God. And we should say, this is the Lord's doing, and it might be marvelous in our eyes. When God uses you, God uses me, God uses our church, God uses our family, we should say one thing: let all glory be unto God. In Romans chapter 1, we read that man became foolish even though they claimed themselves to be wise. Even though they knew God, they did not honor Him as God or give thanks. But they became futile in their speculation, and their foolish hearts were darkened. What did they do? They exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God to the image in the form of corruptible man and of birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. How shameful, isn't it? The glory that belonged to the incorruptible God was exchanged to the corruptible man. The glory was given to birds, four-footed animals, and crawling creatures. Look what happened. The next verse says, "Therefore God gave them over in the lust of their hearts to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them." Children of God, God doesn't want His glory to be stolen. All glory and honor in our lives should be all given to God and God Himself. Look at Saul. What happened to his life? Mount Gilboa. He ends his story up there. So, what do we understand today from this episode? Let's give all glory in our life for all our achievements God's great doings in our lives, let's give all glory to the one and only God above. May God bless us. Thank you.